Hello, mis cielitos, and welcome back. Coco is here, and I am continuing the extras of Raging Loop. So this one, the one we will be starting today, I was informed was a very long one. It's like over 2 hours, so I'll probably be splitting this one in half. It is Writer versus Mystery Station, and this one's just a straight horror one. Our intrinsic journalist eventually finds a mystery she didn't ask for. Can the wise boy save her from the heretical land illuminated by the light of madness? I wonder if it's going to be both of them or just... Yeah, mamilla. Yes? This is Jose. Mamilla. Pleased to talk to you again. Did something happen? Well, I do read the newspapers, but I just wouldn't like it if there was something I couldn't understand from the outside. Oh, good to know. Huh? Well, that happens a lot. I used what I had stocked up, so I didn't end up getting dropped as a contributor. So, why did you call me? Huh? I'm surprised you remember that I used to write about that. Oh, don't worry. I actually do know something like that. In fact, I can introduce you to the seminars I went to. But... are you sure? It's in the countryside, and it's not a very prestigious college. It's public, though, so at least it's cheap. Okay, I can do it if you're fine with me. Oh, no need for that. It's just an extra. I'll email you the exact date. Oh, that won't work. Can you wait until tomorrow? I'll write you again. Can I have your phone number? It's not on here. All right. 85. As she wrote down the number, she looked at the clock. She was almost running late, so she switched gears. Repeating the number, she skillfully avoided the pedestrians and approached the station. You were driving? I assumed you were in... I heard the noises, but I assumed you were in the passenger seat. Okay, I understand. Hello, excuse me? As she ended the call, she, the freelance writer, Hisako Mamiya, put her phone in her bag and ran. She was on the move. She had to participate in a press conference regarding a contamination caused by a certain food company. He normally worked behind a desk, so this day was special in that it was mostly fieldwork. Hisako would have to worry about the content of the call later. But wow, it's so damn hot. It was July. The Tokyo heat was reminiscent of the tropics, and no one could blame her for cursing about it. A few hours later, she was near Shinjuku Station. Hisako was slowly staggering inside. The press conference was utter chaos. The company's PR were making excuses, while newspaper reporters were barraging them with questions. To Hisako, that wasn't a bad thing, since she could use the very situation for a humorous article. However, the other freelance journalists invited her to drink and dragged her around until it was late at night. All of them had grudges against newspaper and TV journalists, so they had a good time complaining about them. Hisako, however, had been very uncomfortable throughout the whole thing. Sorry, I don't actually hate them that much. I don't belong here. Hisako was a journalist, but at the same time she was an entertainment writer, and she was fully aware of that. She was the type to reveal new info just so the others could have fun. That gave her some donations, so this was another part of her work to her. Her pride as a journalist didn't go beyond not writing lies and contacting the primary source herself. The other journalists seemed to be more about exposing the truth and defeating the media, and Hisako couldn't relate to that. Well, as long as you're not straight up lying or harassing people just trying to go about their lives. As long as you're not a paparazzi. Wasn't that just a facade? The desire to see things you shouldn't. The desire to laugh at others' misfortune. The desire to gain an advantage by knowing things no one else knew. The desire to take the moral high ground. Such desires were common to mankind, and wasn't journalism just a trade to present such products to the masses? They already violated laws and social norms to get new info. Didn't they have to put their lives on the line for their trade and work for their customers? If something wasn't going well, wasn't it because they weren't doing their jobs right? Right back at me, I suppose. Forcing a self-deprecating smile, he drank some of her shochu, and by the time it was time to leave, she'd emptied the whole bottle. With some of the others worrying about her, she parted ways with them. I'm okay. This wasn't enough for her to lose consciousness or concentration. The only problem was that she didn't get to enjoy the floaty, languid feeling alcohol gave. Hisako hadn't enjoyed a good night out drinking for a while. She was so busy she had to refuse invites from her old friends, and often ended up having to go to gatherings she didn't enjoy. What kind of life was this? One that a lot of people are living, unfortunately. She chuckled to herself at that thought, but then pushed it aside. It was a dangerous thought to have when drunk. I don't have much time. Shinjuku Station was like a maze. Making it to the last train would be a challenge. If she didn't make it in time, you'd have to stay in the station. Hisako had tough nerves, but even she was averse to the idea of sleeping drunk in the station. You gotta hurry. She remembered that there were lots of urban legends surrounding Shinjuku Station. There could be something inhuman among the passerby. There could be a cenotaph under the Chuo line. What is a cenotaph? Let me look that up. Cenotaph. An empty grave, tomb, or monument erected in honor of a person or group of people whose remains are elsewhere or have been lost. The Shinjuku, the station that had that gas attack? No, it was... Wait. Tokyo subway sarin attack. Okay. It was Tokyo... 3 lines of the Tokyo Metro. Then Taito Rapid Transit Authority. There could be routes that took you somewhere you couldn't return from. Drunk as she was, she could maybe see 1 or 2 things she couldn't see normally. I'd love to see something. However, she passed the ticket barrier, passed the platform, and got on the final train without encountering anything. I'm so tired. With all the desk work she had to do, unless she was doing interviews, she could hardly go outside. And this time was taken up by the meeting with editors from a magazine company, participation in the press conference, and the drinking party. Even between all that, she'd taken out her mini laptop, made some drafts for the stricter deadlines, and made a few calls. It was a productive day, even by her standards, but she'd have to spend all of tomorrow locked up in her room again. I'm not sure if I'm going about this right. No matter how much she worked, her life didn't become any easier. It was a common problem, but it was also true that many such people often wasted their money on momentary pleasures, such as alcohol or girls. She considered that maybe her payments would actually increase if she stopped considering her future and just lived as she wanted. Being on the verge of 30 made her somewhat uneasy. She casually opened her phone and found out that she had over a dozen calls for each day. Ugh. The job was so hard, yet the pay was so low. Next is so cheap. She understood that there had to be a my before that, but she still couldn't stop herself from complaining. If she couldn't gain money, she wanted to at least have an experience that you couldn't buy with money. Well, if you had been able to remember everything, you could say you had that, but you know what? I think you're better off not remembering. I think you're much happier not remembering. Oh, she does? In that sense, the incident in Fujiyoshi, where she was attacked by locals wearing wolf clothing, was quite special. Well, I guess the very last run where they fixed everything, they still had some funky stuff going on. However, it was dangerous, and she didn't earn any money for it, so it was a loss overall. Incidentally, that was the first time she'd encountered someone who claimed to be a fan of her work. Haruaki Fusaishi, due to the danger he put her through, wanted to know more about what happened there. They were still in touch via email, and she often tried to drag him in for an interview, but he always put it off, saying something about deadlines. He claimed to be a college or grad student. Was he studying a very difficult subject? It should have been summer break right now, so he should have had time, but it was now Hisako's turn to be busy. The circumstances weren't favorable. Though she'd have some time after she crossed this mountain, so she had to plan her next job, whether or not it involved Haruaki. Where should I go next? I imagine weird countryside places would have some good stories for me. Hisako was always a curious person. He was born in Shikoku and often interacted with stories of the 88 temples, Gyobu, Tanuki, and any other mythical cultural aspects. She'd taken up folkloristics in a college near her home. It was very interesting, and she could study it with passion. However, she'd never had the mythical encounter she'd always hoped for. She then went on to investigate urban legends and modern paranormal encounters. She'd even moved to Tokyo because she wanted to unravel the darkness of the city. She then got a job with a small magazine and was put in charge of the occult column, but it didn't do well and went out of business in less than a year. Hisako even felt that this sudden state of unemployment was the most paranormal moment in her life. She couldn't decide where to work next, was writing articles as if it were a part-time job, and eventually ended up freelancing. I've done a bit of that. Freelance writing. She was happy that she could feed herself, but she realized that this wouldn't keep going forever. Perhaps getting married would make her future more stable. I have no one. The people in the publishing and magazine companies were either other women or had families, while her old friends from her homeland were already getting married. She wasn't really interested in other journalists, especially after that drinking party. If only Hashimoto-san wasn't married. Yeah, he'd be a good catch. Very dependable man. And very dedicated to his family. Yigh Hashimoto, the cameraman she briefly worked with, was someone else she greatly respected. He was a man of character, skill, and always looked at things with the eyes of a professional. The little consolation after the party they had after the Fujiyoshi trip was actually the first time in a while she'd enjoyed drinking with someone. She was so drunk, she even aired her complaints about the other journalist. He responded with a flat expression. I believe that's because you are smart and have a conscience. If you ask me, I believe that about 60 to 70% of people live without thinking whether something is right or wrong. Such people need justice to live without causing problems to society. The obvious ones, at least. The same applies to journalism. The flag of justice isn't always waved for self-satisfaction or pretense. The world is full of people who are willing to do terrible things the moment they give up on being just. And that's why I believe it's necessary, even if, as you said, it often sounds hypocritical. Even if some ideals seemed empty, losing them could bring about an endless hell. Hisako didn't know if that was Yudai's own take, or if he was just playing along with her subculture-like idea. But she did feel that he was right. I wonder if there's another man as tolerant, considerate, and gentlemanly as him. Though she'd have liked someone less horizontally challenged. Why? Like, if you have your preferences, why? But I just feel like the visual novel is just taking jabs at fat people. She didn't mind fatter or slimmer people, but someone on Yudai's level was bound to cause physical trouble. In various situations. When she was little, Hisako was a daddy's girl, and so far, all the men she'd dated were older than her. She was entirely aware of her own Electra complex, and that it might have warped her eye for men. What am I thinking? I feel like there's a big difference between being a daddy's girl and having an Electra complex, but that's just me. The inside of the train was almost completely silent. There were some other people in the car, but they were all sleeping on the seats. Many of them were as drunk as she was. She herself was half asleep too. Whenever she closed her eyes, her thoughts became a mess, and she almost leaked saliva from her mouth. But I'm not completely asleep. It was a strange sensation. She was certain that she wasn't having a dream, but was somewhere between waking and sleep. Perhaps this feeling itself had been giving a dream. A drunk person's senses had no stability or certainty. She couldn't sense the passage of time. She couldn't hear anything. She couldn't feel the shaking of the train. Drowsy as she was, she didn't notice how the train stopped and a female passenger got off into the darkness outside. Hisako's house was in Kawagoe. It was a 50-minute train ride away from Shinjuku, and 10 minutes on foot. She wouldn't know how to respond if someone asked her whether it was a good spot. There were far more potato fields than residences there, so it was pretty dark out due to the lack of streetlights. The place Hisako was renting was at the edge of such an area. The only reason she took it was the rent was a cheap rent, and the fact that the area reminded her of her homeland. The dark night road was nearly empty. Of course, she'd never encountered anything paranormal on this path. All you have here are perverts. The number of them had increased recently, and there were many signs warning about them. Apparently, they were the type who exposed themselves to women, but as long as they weren't violent, they weren't a problem for Hisako. I'm not a little girl anymore. The thought made her realize that she was aging, which only made her more depressed. The fact that the most unusual things she could encounter after moving to the city were just some perverts made her feel really strange. She noticed someone walking in front of her. You could see lots of people walking out at night in the heart of the city, but that was pretty rare here. Rare enough for it to be unusual. Is that a pervert? He felt that she'd just imagined one into reality. No one else was here, and it looked like a man. It was easy to see him as suspicious. Normally, she'd have been more alert and have the good sense to switch to the other side of the road. However, she was more drunk than she'd realized. Maybe I could make an article out of this. A pervert's diet. Garlic's effectiveness in fending off perverts. Thinking of those and other, more indecent headlines, she took out her notepad. She was actually planning to interview the pervert. Hisako walked up to and looked at him. He had luggage with him. Was he planning to pull something out? He wasn't wearing a coat. The man was wearing normal summertime clothing. And he was somewhat familiar. Oh! I figured it would be someone we knew, but I didn't know who they were referring to. Huh? No way. That was her line. Mamiya-san! The writer! Why are you here? That was her line too. Yasunaba Ribe-kun? Yes. She suddenly remembered the call. She'd been contacted by Kaori Oribe, the woman in charge at the dining hall in Yasumisu, and someone she'd wanted to interview on May. The lady had called to ask for something. Her son had come to Tokyo to visit colleges, but neither she nor him knew any good destinations, so she wondered if Hisako could help with that. When she was interviewing Kaori about the Shishi Nare, Hisako had mentioned that she was studying folkloristics before. Apparently, her son had become interested in that lately. College students who knew what they wanted to learn before they even enrolled were rare, so any seminars would welcome passionate and skilled volunteers. This afternoon, they talked on the phone about it, agreeing on a new time. She was so busy that she'd missed most of the details, but Hisako was certain that she hadn't been told that the boy had already arrived in Tokyo. Her address wasn't on the business card she'd given them, and looking at his reaction, this meeting was surely just a coincidence. Huh? You're staying nearby? That was the plan. What? You took a place in such an inconvenient half-rural area? You could understand if it was closer to the metropolitan area. There were colleges there. Anyway, you didn't know of any local places where one could properly stay. Well, Takumi's, my acquaintance's family, go out to work in this area, so I asked them to take me in. Hisako could understand that. Local rent prices were low, and there was a lot of industry and agriculture here. I see. What a coincidence. But why are you walking around at night? I just can't get there. Huh? I checked a few places, but I couldn't get there, so I gave up and decided to just wander around. The whole night? Yes. Whoa, hold on! What kind of thinking was that? You seemed like an intelligent sort back in Yasumisu. Was that a misunderstanding? Probably just a little naive about, how other places work. You're planning to pull an all-nighter right before going to college. You'll barely be alive. I got sleep on the bus here, and I'm pretty good at pulling all-nighters. But you need a place where you can relax, right? Ideally, yes. You won't see trains or taxis this late. Hey. Couldn't you have secured something earlier? You're in the city. You can easily find a place to stay. I don't have the money. Then you have late-night karaokes, video stores... Wait, you're too young for those. A diner? I'll walk around some colleges for 3 days starting tomorrow, but all I have is the money for train and food. How much are we talking? I have 500 yen. Oh. Was this a field trip to him? I'd intended to eat at Takumi's parents' place, but I can get bread for 100 yen. I'll get by. No, you won't! And even if you can handle one all-nighter, you'll have another one. You don't have the money to get a place. That's true. I might have to use my free time to search for a place to sleep. Like in a park or under a bridge. He was severely lacking in street smarts. Listen, I know you're here on a planned college tour, but your planning leaves no room for failure. Especially monetarily. You need money to get by, so have some on you at all times. Well, we're really poor. Hisako didn't know what to say. You could tell that the settlement was special in that regard. Even bringing one person to Tokyo was a great expense on their part. When did you intend to visit the college I would introduce you to? What? Introduce? Huh? You weren't told? Your mother called me around noon today. She asked if I could introduce you to folkloristic seminars, and I said I could, but needed some time. Folkloristics? Was that your subject? Yes. I told that to Kaori Oribe-san when we chatted. Mom, you really didn't have to. What? Well, this is my first time outside on my own, so she was really worried. I'm actually thinking of exploring both law departments as well as the humanities subjects along those lines. Like archaeology and cultural anthropology? Yes, I've been interested in that recently. When I told that to Mom, she was completely for it, and that's what led to it. She must have called you after remembering your conversation with her. Sorry. Hey, it's no trouble, really. But how did she intend to help us meet if you're already here? She doesn't think things through sometimes. A true parent-child relationship. Everything made sense to her now, but she didn't say it. Anyway, wandering around at night is a no-no. There are perverts in this area. They might think you are one and report you.
What? Well, that really happened.
Don't underestimate the city. I guess I have no choice. Come to my place.
Huh?
It's messy, but it's better than sleeping outside. Come on, it's right here.
But I can't.
You also can't stay outside. Just come with me.
Mamiya-san, are you drunk?
I'm not, she said lyingly.
You are.
She was. But even if she wasn't, she would have surely done the same thing. She was optimistic and proactive. She would act before she had a chance to be embarrassed about it, and worry about it later. That was what the freelance writer, Kyuko Hosei, was at the core. Well, aren't you lucky? Imagine how troubled you'd be if we didn't run into each other.
I'm troubled right now.
And why?
I'll go to the bathroom or something.
No, don't. Let me clean it up first. But before that, I gotta take this... off there.
I'm not looking, I'm not...
Hisako could remember fooling around like that, but then it all went blank. Hisako... Come on, stop that. She woke up with sunlight in her eyes. Her head felt heavy. It wasn't bad enough to be a hangover, but it wasn't pleasant. She was wearing her indoor clothes, and there were other clothes, and other things, littered all about, but she didn't mind it. Where was he? She looked around her 12-tatami-sized room and found a note on the small table next to the wall. It was a message written in steady handwriting.
It's time, so I'm leaving now. Thank you for the phone. I'll figure out how to use it and contact you when I have free time. Thank you so much for looking after me, too. Also, I didn't see anything yesterday. Honest.
Good. Sunaka is good.
He did not deserve to be harassed, so...
He remembered that she lended him one of her personal phones. He had several. Some for work, some for herself. He'd probably never used one before, but she was sure he would get by. It wasn't hard to begin with, and it had numbers of her other phones, so there would be no problems as long as he figured them out. Though he was the type to spend the night outside if he couldn't find a place, so he could easily make some strange misunderstandings. What if he tried to put money in it, or forgot to charge it? He's not that stupid. Hisako figured that it would all work out. Alright, time for work. She fired herself up and stood up. He had even more work than before, after all. They'd agreed that he'd come back once he was done for the day. No matter what he did here, he couldn't get far without money. She would clean up the place before he returned. In the end, Hisako couldn't clean up the bathroom or bath last night, and she could only hope he didn't see them. Also, when looking at it realistically, he didn't find a reason to give him money to stay and eat at a hotel or something. She had no obligation to do that, and if she gave him too much money, he'd probably be so humbled that it would be painful for her. He already had him stay over once. Another day wouldn't hurt. He was a man, sure, but he was like a dozen years younger than her. If he was the sort to make some sort of mistake, he would surely have made it last night. Was it a good idea to call his mother as proof that there was nothing special happening here? She figured she would do it when he was around. If he would stay over again, she figured she had to prepare food for him. What though? Curry? Steak? Fried food? A 17-year-old had to be gluttonous. The food had to be something substantial. Or maybe something weird, yet extremely delicious. It was time for her to show off her knowledge as a critic of strange foods. Hisako would leave the boy awestruck for her excessive knowledge of ingredients and cooking methods. That meant that this was basically part of her job. Nothing personal. It would surely take more time and effort than just ordering something, but this was a matter of initiative. With that decided, she had to open up her afternoon for shopping, washing, and utensil preparation. Hisako had 3 articles to write today. It was 9 right now. She'd overslept. 3 articles in 3 hours? Was that a joke? However, instead of giving up then and there, she removed the makeup that had been on her since yesterday and faced her desk without even changing into something. She felt like she could do it. It worked out. After breaking her speed record writing up the 3 articles, she faxed and mailed them to the clients. 1 was signed off on instantly, while 2 needed some minor changes, which she'd done in no time. She wrote these out really fast, but that didn't damage the quality. In fact, one company even praised her. The text has more oomph to it. Did something good happen? Good? Hisako herself was aware that she was having fun right now. Well, it's been years since I made food for someone else. She'd shown her skill at the drinking parties she had with the girls in her college years, and she treated her previous partners to handmade food. But once she became employed, she no longer had time for any of that. She might have been more desperate for human contact than she realized. But to work 3 times faster because of some rice, the kind of machine does that. Or does this say more about how lazy I was all this time? Of course I wouldn't make more money like that. Did that mean that her problems would be solved if she got married and made food for her hubby every day? That realization made her jump to her feet, then sigh. She had no good person for that role after all. Oh well. With that, she now had half a day off, so she began cleaning and thinking of the menu. Come 2 o'clock, she put her makeup on and left. As she locked the door, the key shone under the sun within the clear sky. The weather was nice. Yasunaga hadn't contacted her yet. It could have been simply that he was busy, or because he didn't actually know how to use this phone. Even so, he should have been able to come back without a problem. A mountain child's sense of direction had to be good, surely. Thinking that, Hisako went to the station. She passed the small station that echoed the announcement, and entered an old-looking car of a dull silver color. It wasn't the morning or even rush hour, so there were few people both in the train and on the platform. She casually sat down and rested. Since she needed both rare ingredients and kitchen utensils, she decided to go to a supermarket in the inner city. Hisako even made a note of what to get. If she finished within an hour, she was bound to return before the rush. She spent the next 40 minutes doing nothing. If only it was always like this. She'd have loved to live her life spending half of her days working, and half doing household activities. She enjoyed them. And she'd have loved to have a gentle, reliable older man at her side to spend such days with. She remembered the faces of her previous partners. One was a senpai in her college club. One was a young employee in a gastropub where she had been a part-timer. And one was a senpai in her study department. The reason for breaking up was always the same. The man became bored of her. Ow. She could understand why. He wasn't the type of person a man would look for in a younger woman. He wasn't cute, was crude, had stern eyes, and was subculture focused. I think she's cute, and I think the other things are positives. Dating her for a while was enjoyable, but a lifetime of her was too much. It was like her current job trying out delicacies. She knew that she'd messed up when picking her preferred kind of man. She would have probably fared better with someone the same age or younger. But wasn't it too late to struggle on that front? Oh no, I'm having so much fun that my mind's going where it shouldn't. Hisako decided to sleep for a bit. She'd been so energetic this morning that it was coming back to bite her. It could have been the alcohol too, so she figured she had to rest a bit. If she slept, you wouldn't have to think about the ghosts of the past. So far, she hadn't seen a single one of her ex-boyfriends in her dreams, and she wondered what it said about her. Thinking such familiar things, she closed her eyes. Strange. He's not answering. Surrounded by other visitors, Yasunaga was standing in the campus of one of the colleges he was visiting. He went through 2 colleges and properly participated in a total of 4 relevant events, such as open campus and simulated enrollment. It was rare for Yasunaga's own plans to fail. In that sense, this one was particularly troublesome. The fact that he couldn't get to Takumi Muro's family home was one such failure. He couldn't find the residence he was told about no matter how hard he looked. One moment he thought he was walking around only to come out on a completely unfamiliar path. He'd asked the locals for directions, but no matter how well he followed them, he'd just gotten more and more lost. He failed to find any public phones, so he couldn't even call to ask for someone's help. When it became dark, he'd given up on trying to get there, and arrived at the road he'd walk by in the morning. He couldn't really understand what was up. Was it because the town was unfamiliar to him? Was that really it? It wasn't a coincidence. There was intent behind this. I feel like I've had these sensations way more often since that time. That time was the strange incident in which a god appeared in Yasumisu. Even now, he couldn't help but believe that it was all done by human hands. After all, there was no god in this world who would send the poor residents of Yasumisu on a trip to Atami. There were many mysteries, such as the wolf guy's suicide, or the collapse of the head families, but it was clear that there was some sort of conspiracy. And going on the trip had protected them from its effects. They'd been saved by the clearly human, yet godlike person. When they'd come back, everyone in Kami Fujiyoshi was shocked. There'd been a mist, yet everyone was okay. Not only that, but they came back on a limousine bus. Whatever happened there, life in Fujiyoshi had become easier since then. He could vaguely feel that their encounter with God was related to the fall of the village heads, and was a turning point for everyone there. The difference in school life was the most striking. The students related to the village heads had somehow vanished, and some had become friendlier with them.
I didn't know how to respond when they asked me about the mist and what I saw there. He always fell silent when asked. Chikamochi joked around, and Haru calmly dismissed everyone. But it wasn't just the people that had changed. He could feel something else. The thing that had been oppressing them had vanished, and there was now someone else who watched over them instead. He could feel it even now when he was far away from Fujiyoshi. It wasn't unpleasant. He felt like he could keep calm and live with confidence. Getting lost is still a problem, though. Or maybe I could just go wild and sleep outside. I feel like I wasn't really myself last night. Was the mountain god telling him to give up on the exams and return? Haru had sent him off with a smile, but he really didn't think that was the case. He'd even sewn him a charm to keep him safe along the way and help him succeed in his studies. It was still in his bag, and he felt it would bring him luck. Maybe it's what helped me run into Mamiya-san. It was a fact that he couldn't have bumped into her if he hadn't been wandering outside that late. Hisako Mamiya-san. She was an outsider to the isolated settlement of Yasumisu, and the first impression she gave off was that of a refined city lady. It was hard to become like her just by reading textbooks. Amy Serisawa had gone to college in the city, and also returned so refined that he could hardly recognize her. As one who had feelings for her, he found it both charming and unfortunate. After all, he'd fallen for the animalistic Jamie he'd known since childhood. Even if that was still there, the people, especially the men, she'd met outside had slowly changed her. By the way, when they'd returned from the Atami trip and she'd returned to college, he laughed and said she would go meet God. She probably knew that God and that smile could only mean that she... Hold it. Stop. It's time to give up.
Chimi had left Yasumisu and become free. Even if she was far away from him, and it made him feel lonely, it was something to be glad about. He had to follow in her footsteps and become free himself. Switching gears, Yasunaga took out the phone again and called the addresses Me Deadlines and Me Connections. It just continued to ring and no one picked up. Was she asleep? It was already afternoon. Evening wasn't too far off. The rush in the morning had been awful. He could get out somehow, but the whole place would be packed again when it was time to return. He knew where he had to get off, but he wanted to avoid missing his stop and being unable to pay for travel again. He had to prioritize contacting Hisako. Upon deciding that, Yasunaga began killing time.
I have somewhere I want to go, after all.
It's so huge! After walking around for 20 minutes, Yasunaga entered a college library. The old wooden interior was lined with countless bookshelves, and besides the sounds of visitors turning pages, the place was completely quiet. According to the documents, this was the largest assortment of books in the area. Apparently, only school employees and students could borrow books, but everyone could hang around and read. It was a perfect place to kill time. You could also use one of the dozens of computers to search for the right book, or just find out more. Yasunaga knew TVs, but he'd never touched a computer. He figured he would need it in the future, though, so he certainly wanted to touch them. Also, a book from the hands-on learning experience left him intrigued, so he wanted to know more. It was a textbook about ruin excavation.
It's surprisingly expensive, so it's best to just read it in one place like this.
Before, he wanted to become a lawyer to earn lots of money for his mother, but he'd been changing recently. His mother, Kaori Oribe, and Takumi Muro had begun to seriously consider getting married. She'd probably start to enjoy living in Yasumisu a lot more than before. Thus, she insisted that Yasunaga and his brother do whatever they wanted. About a month ago, Yonosuke no Sato, who'd left Fujiyoshi, had sent Yasunaga a sealed envelope. Inside, there was a letter and a photo of God's mask. He wrote that he had the thing with him. If Yasumizu wanted to prepare a proper place for it, he would return it to them. The Nosato document said that a certain someone had dug it up from Yasumizu. Inosuke had no affinity for this kind of thing himself, but if Yasunaga was interested, he would contact his family and have them help him. Yasunaga had been captivated by the possibilities the letter provided, as well as the shape of the mysterious mask displayed in the photo. He knew that studies were about looking for reasons and results. If there was a reason, there was a result. So by knowing the reason, you could know the result, and by analyzing the results, you could arrive at the reason. As results and reasons switched places, things that had and didn't have a shape would switch places and create unexpected value. Yasunaga found this extremely interesting. That was why he enjoyed learning, and why results followed him. Through the mock exams, he'd found out that he could easily be top of his class in college. The path of a lawyer was open to him. However, he was enchanted by the wolf mask. He wanted to know who made it and why, and the reasons why it had so many similarities to the mountain festival wolf costumes and face cloths. What methods would be involved in finding that out? Such questions made him extremely excited. This reminded him that Hisako had said she would recommend him to folkloristic seminars. If he chose to go there, Hisako would become his senpai. He had a few more questions about it, so he would stay at her place again. He wasn't sure if she'd allowed that, but he wanted to talk. Last night she'd fallen asleep in an indecent position, and he couldn't even ask her anything. He remembered how she turned around and... Stop it! He shook the memory off. It was best to act like he hadn't seen anything. Yasunaga was quite perplexed by the difference between her usual self and her when she was drunk. How old is she? He did seem older than him, but still far from old. As he thought such things, he realized something. He might have a thing for unprincipled older ladies. Oh, I was worried I was gonna go in this direction. No, that's just the worst! He failed to get Jamie, so he would go for Hisako? That would be too simple, straightforward, and hasty. Instead, he focused on the library. He tried calling her on the phone again, but the result was the same. Yasunaga sighed, put the phone away, and entered the library. Which I want to clarify, there's nothing wrong with him crushing on someone older, but I just hope she does not reciprocate, which I think is gonna be the thing, considering how she was going on about how maybe she should switch to younger men. Maybe not that much younger. Yasunaga sighed, put the phone away, and entered the library. And I think I'll go ahead and wrap things up right here. Thank you all so very much for watching. I hope you have a wonderful time zone wherever you are, and as always, please do take care of yourselves and each other. Toodaloo-hoo!